Hari Om. Let's start with the prayer. Om Samastagana Kalyani Niratam Karunamayam Namami Chinmayam Devam Sadgurum Brahma Vidvaram Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsachanura Mardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Bande Jagadgurum Tvameva Mata Cha Pita Tvameva Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Tvameva Vidya Dravidam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Amadeva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Kurudeva Deva. Hari Om. We are doing the Panchadashi, the 8th chapter, Kutastha Chaitanyam, Kutastha Deepa Prakaranam, where Vidyaranya trying to differentiate what is the Kutastha Chaitanyam or pure consciousness that is getting reflected slowly in the local equipments, or Sakshi Chaitanyam, and how is that different to reflected consciousness, Chidabhasa. So I have to use Viveka. Viveka is what? The Nitya Anitya Vastu Viveka. What is that which is Nityam, eternal, and that is which is Anityam, that is ephemeral, and how do I distinguish when they are two occurring together? So it's not a mixture of two of equal type, because one is of higher order reality compared to the other one. So it's not easy to distinguish, separate the two. If it is of the same order of reality, one can separate. I can separate the ring and the bangle because they have a different attributes and they are of the same order of reality. Whereas I cannot separate gold and the ring, or a gold and the bangle. So gold and the ring or gold and the bangle belong to different orders of reality. So gold is of higher order because gold remains nityam, means if I ring change into bangle, bangle change into necklace, gold remains as a gold only. Only akara, the ring akara shape has changed into bangle akara, and bangle shape into necklace shape, and so on. The shape is changing, therefore name is also changing, but it's gold only. So gold point there is no change, so it is changeless entity in the changing things. So you have two things which are together and they are inseparable physically. Cognitively, I should know it is gold, and gold is not same as ring. Even though gold and ring are together here, gold is different from a ring, because gold is a word which has a different meaning, ring has a word which has a different meaning. The padam is there, pada is words are different, but only difference is for a ring there is no padartham, whereas a gold there is no padam and padartham, but there is no akara also. The ring has the attributes. One is, it is a perceptibility, I can see a ring, and the utility, and there is a usefulness of the ring different from usefulness of the bangle, and transactability, I can take her anywhere around in the world carrying that ring. So therefore the perceptibility, transactability, utility and all that applies to ring. And a gold in its pure form, AU, it's just nothing but no form. A formless gold cannot be used, cannot be perceived, cannot be utilized, and so on and so forth. So the higher order of reality is useless, and in that form there is no form. Is useless, and there is no, you cannot transact it unless it takes a form. If it is a form, then it called vivarta. Vivarta means a change of state, from its original to another one without undergoing any modification. That's called vivarta. So gold is transformed as though into ring and a bangle and a necklace without really undergoing any transformation. It's a transformationless transformation. So gold in fact is becoming into ring and a bangle, but it's not becoming into ring and a bangle because gold still remains as a gold only. But ring and gold, ring is different from a bangle, bangle is different from a necklace. So from the utility point on, all that, gold has become something. At the same time, gold has not become anything. This kind of contradictory things is possible only because the order of reality of the gold and the ring are different. So when the other people criticize that you have mithya, mithya means it appears to be there, but it's not really real because it's not nityam. Therefore it is changing. So changing things are not really real. Whereas in the other philosophical traditions like Visishtadvaita, Advaita, changing things are there because it's real. Unreal things cannot undergo a change. So for them it is changing, therefore it is real. For Advaita it is changing, therefore it's not real. So this is a philosophical standpoint, because if it is changing, it cannot be real. If it is changing, also it demands, a change also demands there has to be changeless entity in the changing things. And that's what the basis of law of conservation. Matter is conserved when the things are changing. One form is transformed into another form. It's a transformationless transformation. Gold in one form is transferred into another form, while gold remaining in the same. That's what gold is higher order, a changeless entity in the changing things. Same way, there is a changeless entity, Brahman. Why it is changeless? It is infinite. So infinite cannot undergo change. That it appears to be, it's not really real, but apparently real, and apparently real is only a mithya. Means it appears to be there, therefore it's not real. Whereas the other philosophies, it appears to be there, therefore it is real. Whereas this, you accept that as real, we have no problem, but explain to me that if gold is real and the ring is real, what's the difference between the two? What's the difference between the reality of the gold and the reality of the ring? There is an ontological difference. Ontological means the degree of order of reality is different, because the ring changes whereas gold doesn't change. So there is a changeless reality versus changing reality. Changing reality, we call it a mithya. Changeless reality is called satyam. Satyam means that which remains the same in all three periods of time. So you have to accept the order of reality in the world. In the world is called Jagat, continuously changing. If the changing things, there has to be changeless entity, that's real, and that's what is called Brahman. And here we are looking at the sloka 27, which we just finished, but we'll chant here, where the Vidyaranya now completed the epistemological analysis, how knowledge takes place. Now he is going into a new topic, where from now on a discussion about the Avachedavada versus the Abhasavada. What is Avachedavada, Abhasavada? Well, the Avachedavada is like the consciousness remain as a pure but enclosed in a particular wall, and that we call it a Jiva. Jiva is nothing but a consciousness enclosed in walls of the buddhi, and it is like a space enclosed in a pot. This is what example even Gaudapada gives in the pot space, or the compared to the infinite space. So pot space, the Jiva comes into picture, a notion of Jiva comes into picture when the pot space start thinking that I am only a pot space, and there is a Mahakasha, the great space, and that's the Lord pervading everywhere, but I am a limited guy, and that is an infinite guy, and so on and so forth. So it is like a part and the total, and that avachin, that is the so-called the division, because the Desa Kala Vastu Parichinnam. Parichinnam means the division is not really division, it is only apparent division. The space cannot be divided into pot space and the rest of the other space. Pot space is also total space only, but pot space thinks that I am separate. That is the problem of Jiva, and that's what the Avachedavada. Abhasavada is pure consciousness, and the buddhi is a subtle material, because subtle material has the capacity to reflect. It reflects the pure consciousness, because pure consciousness is like a light of consciousness getting reflected by the buddhi, called the reflected consciousness, and in the process of reflection, the buddhi is also gaining consciousness. And therefore, the buddhi is a local consciousness called reflected consciousness called Chidabhasa. So you have three things in that. One is the pure consciousness, another is the buddhi, another is reflection. These three things are different in this case, whereas there it is only two things. One is total space and a part space. So this fellow says, the Avachedavadin, making an objection to Abhasavadin, that means the buddhi is a wall, and just like a pot wall is enclosing a space, so Jiva is only enclosed consciousness in the walls of the buddhi. And I can take wherever the buddhi goes, the consciousness is also going. So therefore, I can Gama, Agama, etc. can be explained by simple two aspects. One is the total space and the enclosed space. And therefore, why do you need another three things? In the case of Chidabhasa, you need three things: total consciousness or original consciousness, the reflecting medium buddhi, and the reflection Chidabhasa. Why do you need the Chidabhasa reflection? Unnecessarily you are bringing and complicating. So that was his question. Now the answer by the Abhasavadin, the reflected consciousness argument. And by the way, the Vidyaranya subscribes to the Abhasavada because he is coming from that tradition. So he is giving now answer to it. 28. Srunva Sangha Parichedam Srunga Sangha Paricheda Matro Jivo Bhavin Nahi Matra Jivo Bhavin Nahi Anyata Gata Kudyadjaihi Anyata Gata Kudyadjaihi Avachinnapya Jivata Avachinnapya Jivata. Together, Srunva Sangha Paricheda Matra Jivo Bhavin Nahi Anyatha Gata Kudyadjaihi Avachinnasya Jivata. So Srunu Asangaha, Srunu Asangaha. Srunu means please listen to the answer now, because you asked the question, why are you bringing unnecessarily third factor and making our life miserable? So it says why. Here is a reason. Srunu, listen why. Asangaha kotas, Asangaha means the one which is not connected, not attached. That is called pure consciousness, Bhuttastha Chaitanyam. That is called Asangoham, 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 Punah Punaha, Sachidananda Rupoham, Ahamevaham Avyaha. Says I am untouched. So that Asangaha, Kotastha Chaitanyaham, that pure consciousness which is not attached, Paricheda Matrat, by having limited in the pot walls. So if you say this is a Jiva, Jiva is, according to Avachedavada, consciousness is enclosed in the walls of the buddhi, and therefore it is pure consciousness only, and it's in the buddhi, and therefore the Paricheda Matra, by having the limitations of the pot, you are creating the Jiva. Jivan Nabhed. He says that's not possible. Just by enclosing the consciousness, pure consciousness in the buddhi, you cannot create a Jiva. That's what he says. So you said, I can go all over the world, I don't need the reflection. He says it's not possible to have a Jiva notion in the model that you have. Why? Anyada, if so, otherwise, Gata could Adau. So what about the pot walls? What do you do with the pot walls? Gata could Adau, the pot walls, etc. So kud Adau, Gata could means the walls of the pot are also in the consciousness. Now what are you going to do with it? And Avachinna, of the limitations, Jivata, if that is the case, there is also consciousness limited by the walls of that. You have inside the walls, now at the walls also consciousness, because consciousness is infinite. So they are there in the walls also. So what are you going to do with that? So you have are you going to say the part walls is also Jiva? And that's what he's asking here. Avachinnasya, of the limitations, Jivata, it will not attain just because there it will not attain Jiva notion. So you have two Jivas. One is the one inside the pot, one are the pot walls. Now you have two Jivas. Or if you say that is not a Jiva, then this is also not Jiva. Either you cannot have two Jivas or you don't have any Jiva at all. So you have problem in this. You cannot have a jivatvam by enclosing. That's the essence is. Jivata will not be possible. Avachinnasya jivata nahi. There is no possibility of by just enclosing you cannot create a jiva. That's the statement. So is a counter argument against the avachedavada. So it continues here. Nakudya sadhu Sri Buddhihi. Nakudya sadrusi buddhihi swachatvad iti chet tadha swachatvad iti chet tadha astu nama parichede kim swachenna bhavet tava kim swachenna bhavet tava. Together. Nakudya sadrusi buddhihi swachatvad iti chet tadha astu nama parichede kim swachenna bhavet tava. So if you see, so buddhi is not pure, if that is your answer for it, buddhi is the intellect, swachatvat, being pure, kudya, wall, sadusi, like wall, naiti, it's not possible. Therefore, tatha, astu, let it be so. Parichede, in the limitations. Swachena, by having pure. Tava kim bhavet, what are you accomplished in this? So here is putting a hypothetical answer and a question and a rhetorical question in that. And it says, if you say, in case you answer me that because of the walls, in the case of Jiva, you cannot have a Jiva on the pot walls, you can have a Jiva notion for the inside the consciousness, but the consciousness inside the pots only existence, but there is no Jiva there. If you say why do you care about the purity of the walls? You see, that's what is essentially asking. So, astu, if they are not pure wall, let it be. But what have you accomplished in the process by saying that it's not pure, therefore there cannot be Jiva, and Jiva involves a purity. If you ask, then I'm going to give you a different argument for you. So first, your argument is that you cannot have a Jiva notion in the pot walls or any other walls, because even though it's consciousness, they are not pure enough to become a Jiva. If it is enclosed like in the Buddhi, then it is pure enough to have a Jiva. So a Jiva notion comes only whenever there is a Buddhi, not in the pot. So pot also consciousness has to be there. If you say the purity is the criteria for that, if that is the case, Kim saying, therefore walls also become important for defining a Jiva, or nature of the purity of the walls also become important, because there is no Jiva in the pot, but there is a Jiva inside the Buddhi. So Buddhi is because Buddhi is purer compared to pot walls. That if that is your argument, then in that case, listen to this, my another question now. Sloka 30. Prastena darujanyena kamsya janyena vanahi vikretustanduladinam vikretastanduladinam parimanam visishyate Together, prasthena darujanyena kamsyajanyena vanahi vikritastundulaadinam parimanam visishyate. So here he is giving an example of two pots, two measuring units. One is they used to measure the amount of paddy that has come for selling. So there is a big vessel, and that is essentially how many of those things, 1, 2, 3, about 100 of them, and pack it. So the transaction or the merchants use this. Now he is posing a question. Darujanyena or kamsyam janyena. There are two things. One is the measuring unit. Measuring unit is like a hollow walls with an opening where you fill it up, and that's one unit of that. So inside the volume is a space. So he's asking a question. Darujanyena, the one measuring vessel made with the wood. Kamsyam janyena, the one made with the copper. There are two different materials. Let's say one is more expensive than other. One is made with the wood, another is made with the copper. And prasthena, the measuring vessel. Vikretum, for commodity, if it is sold. Tanduladinam, for the tandulam, for paddy, etc. Parinamat, this is a measuring unit together. Navi visishyate va, is there a difference between the two? So I have two measuring units. One is the copper measuring unit, and other is made with the wooden. And what I am doing is for selling things, I have to measure, and the measuring volume is the same. So when I am measuring, does it make any difference in terms of the wooden wall versus the copper wall? Remember, you said the Jiva notion is not there because of the purity of the walls. In the purity of the walls, because Ghatam is made of mud. Now I'm going to give you different walls. One is made with a little bit pure, another is even more pure. One is a shining, another is not a shining. One is a wood, another is a copper, a polished copper. So one is shining, another is not shining. Now one is a dull, another is a bright. So therefore one is more pure, purity in terms of shiningness. So one is more pure compared to other. So now I take two vessels. Now the amount of this one is the same, but is there a difference between a copper vessel and a wooden vessel? This is asking a question. Because he said the buddhi is a polished one, and the mud pot is not a polished one. Therefore buddhi, there is a jiva. There is no jiva in the pot walls. So polishing is the one that is criteria for this avachedavada to have a jiva notion here. There is no jiva notion there, because this is a polish and that's not a polish. Now I am taking two polished vessels. Would it make any difference in terms of measuring? What's the difference between a polished copper vessel versus a wooden vessel? So the same question is being answered. So avachedavadin is going to respond now. 31. Parinama visheshepi pradibimbo visishyate kamsye yadi tada buddha avapyabhaso bhaved balat avapyabhaso bhaved balat. Together, parinama visheshepi pradibimbo visishyate kamsye yadi tada buddha avapyabhaso bhaved balat. So kamsye is in the copper vessel. Parinama, measurement. Avisheshe is not special. Api, even though that pratibimbaha, the reflection, visishyate, is different. There is a reflection of light and purity, shiningness of the copper vessel, assuming that it is all polished. So the reflection, pratibimba, is different. The reflection of the light in the copper vessel is different from the wooden one, because wooden doesn't reflect compared to copper. So reflection visishyate is viseshanam is added. Yadi, thus argued, in case if you argue that there is a difference in the purity of a reflecting capacity, because in the pot vessel, the mud vessel, there is no reflection of anything, whereas in the buddhi, being pure, there is a reflection. So even though walls are not anything, one is purer and the other, therefore there is a jiva here, there is no jiva. If you are coming close to my argument only. That's what he is trying to apply. So kamsye parinama avisesha, there is no measuring from the point of consciousness what is being measured, there is no difference. Same size buddhi, same size in both cases, whether it's avachedavada, abhasavada. But what is different between a buddhi and the pot? Buddhi has a capacity to reflect, whereas the pot walls do not have the capacity to reflect. Why? We know is, one is the pot walls are made with the gross material, buddhi is made with the subtle material. Whenever the subtle material is there, reflection occurs by the consciousness. Therefore, Chidabhasa occurs. So, what is avaseshanam? So, Jiva notion, if you say the Jiva notion is only enclosed consciousness, then what about the wall? What about the pot wall also is enclosing consciousness because it's also within the consciousness. Then you should have consciousness for the pot walls also. But there is no Jiva notion for the pot walls. So, how do you explain it? He is explaining here, even though your example of a measuring devices between the wooden and the copper, the amount of measured may be same, but there is a reflection of the light in the case of copper, there is no reflection of light in the case of wooden. So that makes a difference between the two. If that is your argument, so this is a argument is put to the objector, Purvapakshi, and if it is yadichet, if that is the case, tada then, buddhehe in the intellect, buddhe api even in the intellect, abhasa chidabhasa balad bhave. So it becomes a reason why reflected consciousness is different from just enclosing a consciousness. And since there is no reflection of the consciousness in the wooden, in the pot, therefore there is no jiva notion. So for jiva notion, consciousness should be reflected. So whenever there is a luminosity in the sky in the night, comes because of the reflection. So medium has to reflect it for me to see it. So therefore if there is no reflection, then there is no luminosity of the object. There is no consciousness of the jiva notion cannot arise unless it reflects. That's what is a problem. Therefore you are coming to my camp only. So in case if you are giving example of a wooden vessel, measuring vessel versus a copper measuring vessel, to make a point that one reflects, another doesn't reflect. Therefore, there is a difference between the reflecting capacity that makes a difference between a copper vessel and a wood vessel. In the same way, there is a difference in the buddhi that is reflecting versus the walls of a pot which is not reflecting. So walls of the pot is not reflecting, therefore it is not luminous by itself, whereas buddhi becomes a luminous because it's able to reflect it. So that's the difference. So therefore jiva as a conscious entity becomes, just as the moon has become a luminous entity because it has a reflecting capacity to reflect the sunlight that is falling on that. But in between the moon and there is a space there that doesn't have the reflecting capacity to reflect. Therefore the space between the two is not luminous for me to see. So it is like a dark space between a Mars and the moon. And this is exactly the argument here. So we go to 32. Ishad bhasana mabhasaha Ishad bhasana mabhasaha Pratibimbastata vidaha pratibhimbastada vidaha bimbalakshana san bimbalakshana san bimbavad bhasati sahi bimbavad bhasati sahi. Together, ishad bhasanama bhasaha pratibhimbastata vidaha bimbalakshana san bimbavad bhasate sahi. So, bhasanam is consciousness, that is ishat, that means limited by the limited reflected consciousness. Abhasaha is called chidabhasa. So limited reflected consciousness is called reflected consciousness. So it is not just enclosed because it's reflected, and the reflection is a limiting factor of the chidabhasa. So reflection depends on the reflecting medium, that's essentially, and it's not reflected by if the medium cannot reflect it. So in the case of inert materials, it cannot reflect the consciousness, it can only reflect the existent part but not the conscious part. Why? Because for consciousness also to get reflected, not only in addition to the existence, it has to be made up of subtle material to reflect consciousness, and that's what is called the Sukshma Sariram is required in order to reflect consciousness. Where there is no Sukshma Sariram, it's only the Sthulam. Sthulam cannot reflect by itself, therefore there is no Jivam in the Sthulam. Only when the Sthula Sariram is also enclosed in the Sthula Sariram, that is, we have Sthula Sukshma Sarira, that is called a Jiva with the Shariram, has to be understood here. So Ishad Bhasana Mabhasaha. So Ishad Bhasanam, the limitations of the consciousness. Abhasaha is called Chidabhasaha. Pratibimba Tatha Vidhi. Similarly, the reflection of the consciousness, Bimba Lakshana Hinaha, does not have the bimbam, the pure consciousness. Lakshanam is not there. So it is not like the original consciousness. The reflected consciousness is not like original consciousness. Wherein the Ghatakasha, enclosed by the pot, the reflected consciousness in the enclosed consciousness is exactly identical to the pot. Space is not different from a total space. So the space inside the pot is the same as space inside the owl. There is no difference in that. Whereas in the case of reflected consciousness, does not have the same properties of the pure consciousness. Therefore this is a Jiva. Pure consciousness is not a Jiva, it is pure Satchidananda Brahman. So that has to be understood why a Jiva notion can arise in the reflected consciousness. Ishad Bhasana Mabhasaha Pratibhimbastata Vidaha. So Chidabhasaha Pratibhimbastata Vidaha, similar to the reflection indeed. Bimba Lakshana Hinaha, it does not have the same lakshanas, the properties of the original consciousness. Sun being Bimbavat Bhasate, but it shines like original. It does not have all the properties of the Lakshanas, but it has some properties. That's where it shines, and that's what is Chidabhasa. Now you have to understand what is this Lakshanas, what is that it has part of it and not complete of it, and this is what called Adhyasa Bhashya. Adhyasa means superimpose error, called mutual superimposition, Anyonya Adhyasa. Anyonya Adhyasa is, I have a buddhi and I have a conscious entity. Conscious entity getting reflected by the buddhi. In the reflection, we have some parts are coming, some parts are superimposed of the properties of the pure consciousness are superimposed on the buddhi. Some properties of the buddhi are superimposed on the consciousness for us to have a chow-chow mixture. This is called Anyonya Adhyasa. What is Anyonya Adhyasa? Anyonya Adhyasa is buddhi now acting like a live factor. It is a superimposed, consciousness is superimposed on the inert things which is not conscious entity. So it is a consciousness is superimposed, and therefore it is part of the property, not full, part of the property is superimposed. What is not superimposed completely? That pure consciousness is nityam, that is eternal, therefore it is not changing, therefore it has a essentially there is no material bhautikatvam, so it is no avikaram. So it doesn't undergo any modifications, and it doesn't have any properties because being infinite, and there is no coming and going of that. So agama, gama agamo, that's what he said last time. So all those are things not there, but things are there for the buddhi, and therefore consciousness, when I say I am conscious entity identifying with the buddhi, I am having now superimposed property of the buddhi on myself. So some of the properties of the buddhi I am picking up, some of the properties of the consciousness I am putting up. So there is a chocho mixture, and which is inseparable, and that's why when I say who are you, I say I am this. So in that I am this is the ahankara, ego. I am superimposing properties of I am and properties of this, and therefore I am equal to this. So therefore it is called anyonya adhyasa, mutual superimposition of, I say I am conscious entity, that part is coming from consciousness. I say I am existent entity, that part is coming from consciousness, because consciousness is Satchit Ananda. And I say I am not happy. I say I am not happy, then what it means? It is superimposing the limitations of the buddhi now on me. That is the biggest problem, because I take the limitations of the buddhi as my limitations, and now I am not happy, therefore I want this, I want this, I want this for me to be happy. So therefore I have a saucho mixture of Satyanuta Mithunikaranam Adhyasam. So Shankara defines a Adhyasa Bhashya before Brahma Sutra for this reason only. Why? Because it's a mutual superimposition is there. So that's how the whole Adhyasa Bhasha itself starts, because I am superimposing on that which is Viruddha Swabhava. That's completely opposite to each other. I am superimposing on that. One is the conscious entity, one is inert entity. So Viruddha Swabhava, one doesn't have any properties, another has the properties. One doesn't have any limitations, other has limitations. Therefore, the properties of the buddhi, that is called anityam, bhautikatvam, avikaratvam, sagunatvam, agamapayitvam. So these are the 5 essential properties of the buddhi. What are the properties? It is not anityam, it is not eternal. Eternal means it keeps undergoing change. So it is anityam, means there was a time where there will not be buddhi. So anityam, bhautikatvam, it is made up of a material, it is a subtle material. And avikaratvam, it continuously undergoes modifications. So buddhi keeps changing. My intellect has been changing since the birth itself, and before that it must have been changed something else. So continuously evolving buddhi. Avikaratvam. Sagunatvam, the properties. What are the properties of my buddhi? You give your biodata, you gives you your properties different from other people's biodata, and you talk about what are all the things that you know, and accomplishments and intellectual accomplishments. I am an engineer and other fellow is a doctor. So those are sagunatvam, the properties. And agamapayitvam, it has a comes and goes all over, all the time. So the buddhi has come and buddhi has not gone, and say buddhile we call it. So buddhi means you are not using it. So therefore agamapayitvam. These are the 5 essential properties of the buddhi. And similarly, all opposite properties of the consciousness. What are the properties? Instead of anityam, it is nityam. Instead of bhautikatvam, it is the pure consciousness without any material in that. It is pure Satchidanandam. So abhautikatvam. So instead of Vikaratvam, avikaratvam. And instead of the sagunatvam, the nirgunatvam. And agamapayityam, it is essentially the stable without any going, because achalatvam. So therefore, all opposite qualities. Now I am superimposing some of it and some of it, and that's called adhyasa. And Shankara defines adhyasa is satyanuta mithunikaranam adhyasam. Satyam anrutam, that means that is real and unreal is mithya. I am superimposing together, and that is what is called adhyasa, superimposition of one the other. So when they are two superimposed, it's not superimposition of the same type, then I can separate it. They are not ontologically of the same order, but they are of different order of reality. I can only separate cognitively using intellect. Therefore, viveka becomes an important criteria for self-realization. So we go into more details of this, the avachedavada, abhasavada, in the few slokas. In fact, that is the topic that is going to be covered for the rest of the chapter in the next 40 slokas or 45 slokas. With this we stop here. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.